I have a task now. And that task is I want to be able to draw all these buttons dynamically. So let's talk about how we're going to do that. I do want them to still show up in this same container though. So let's go ahead and put an ID on here. That allows me to target that container from JavaScript. So we'll call this buttons. Important not to confuse buttons with an S with button as a singular. A single button is a single button. Buttons are all of the buttons. Buttons is just the container that holds each individual button. Buttons as a whole doesn't do anything if you click on it. Each individual button does a thing. Does that kind of make sense? And you might be saying, why are you bothering to point all that out? Well, I'm bothering to point all that out because it's really, really important to understand when it comes to the concepts of writing what is called a loop, to understand that I just want to perform an action like 10 times. And I need each one of those actions to be just slightly unique, but I need to perform the action 10 times. And you're saying, what the heck are you on about? Well, let's write just a little example here in the console of what I'm talking about. Okay? I want to draw 10 buttons to the page. What I don't want to have to do is I don't want to have to manually do what you guys saw me do, where I was like, let's put this on the page and then let's write it out again and put it on the page and change. The only thing that changes when I do this, on click, guess number, I'm going to put a 2 in here and a 2 right here. But beyond that, I did the exact same thing. That is the perfect type of thing to be able to do programmatically using a loop. I want to perform an action X number of times, and I want to be able to change essentially the number that's involved there. So when we are writing out JavaScript, okay, if we want the computer to take an action like 10 times, we can use what's called a for loop. So in order to write a for loop, I can say for, and I can say let current iteration, okay? Iteration is a weird word though, unless you're a software developer. So this would be the number of times the loop has run, which is a very, very, very long variable name. I'm gonna give myself a little bit more room here. And right now, when I very first start programming this, how many times has the loop run? How many times has the action been performed? It's gonna start out at 0. The action has not been performed at all. How many times do I want the loop to run is what comes next. So I'm going to say, while the number of times the loop has run is less than 10, let's perform an action. And at the end of the action, let's take the number of times the loop has run and make it go up by 1. Okay. This is, and I know that got real small. That's because my variable name is super duper long, but this is the basics of every single for loop that you will ever write. I'm going to put this over here as a note, and we'll come back to it. Boop. And what I want you to think about is the number of times the loop has run. What we generally do is we change this very, very long variable name to I, which could stand for the increment or the iterator or the index, but it's just a counter. It's the number of times the loop is run. So if ever you see a for loop, which you guys will see hundreds of for loops, every time you see the letter I want you to think the number of times the loop has run. That very, very long name. And what I can do, just to illustrate, is once again, inside of the curly braces, I'm defining the code that's going to run when this action is performed. We're going to say console.log. We'll say, what is I? And when I press enter, you're going to get I started at 0, then it became 1, then it became 2, then it became 3, then it became 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So if you think about this, I started at 0, and I said as long as I is less than 10, do this one action. And I got 0 all the way to 9. Why did I not get the number 10? It had to be less than 10. So if I want to include the number 10, change this number to 11, right? Or use a less than or equal to right here. Ways of doing that. If I don't want to start at 0, I could change that to start at 5. So let's illustrate. I'd say, man, I don't know why we're starting all the way at 0. Let's start at 5. Now we're going to get 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If I want to get all the way to 10, again, less than or equals to, and now I get all the way to 10. I could also just make that 11. Whichever one I prefer. That is what we call syntactic sugar. Doesn't matter how you write it. It's going to work the same for the computer. So everybody will have their own little preference. Everyone will have their own little flavor of how they want to write little nuancy things like that. That's why it's syntactic sugar. Makes no difference in the end. It's your flavor. And there's no right or wrong for that. It just is what it is. So why are we talking about for loops? Well, we can leverage this little piece of thing in order to make a bunch of buttons for us. So instead of saying, what is I in our for loop, what if I said, well, let's console log button, and we'll do button. And then right inside of here, what I'd like to be able to do is I'd like to be able to put I, because that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, right now, if I just press enter, you're going to get button, and you're going to get the actual letter I, which is not what I want. I want the number that I represents, just like I did with my console log beforehand, where when I did I here, this actually was the number that printed out. This was part of the string. Okay. So let's illustrate that. Oh, no. Cool. So how do I do that? Okay. Well, we can use this fancy character right here. This is called the backtick. It's right next to the 1 on your keyboard. That's not the 2. So other side, right? That's the backtick character. And the backtick character will allow us to come into here, and we can use this special syntax where I use a $sign and curly braces. And what this does is it says, cool, let's use the JavaScript version of that I and not just the letter I. Okay, so totally different things. Okay, if you don't use the backtick character, right, if you just use the quote character, that still stays just $sign curly braces I, because the computer's like, I have no concept that's what you wanted to do. When you use the backtick, okay, that's JavaScript saying, okay, cool, I'm going to interpret some JavaScript in the middle of this message. So now when I press enter, I get button 5, button 6, button 7, button 9, button 10. Why did I start at 5 though? I want to start at 1. I also don't think I need this little I here anymore, right? Well, right here I said let's start at 5. I didn't say let's start at 1. So if we change that, we should be able to start this at 1. We should be able to get rid of this guy here, and we should see printed to our console 10 buttons. But let me ask you, what is different about those 10 buttons and these 10 buttons? Yeah, I can't click these buttons. Can't click those buttons. So I'm going to have to fix this piece right here. I'm going to have to make my little message a little bit bigger. So we're going to do something like on click. Oops. Oh boy, make sure you spell things right, otherwise it won't work. On click, guess number. And once again, I've got to do this thing and put it in right there. And now what I should see is I have essentially the exact same output here in a dynamic format as I have over here in a hard-coded format. 100, I can get 100 buttons that fast. I can get 1,000,000 buttons that fast. Computer's going to be able to do that way faster than I can manually hand code out 100 buttons. Does that kind of make sense? So what I need to be able to do is I need to be able to get this text into this container right here. I want to do that programmatic. So we have a job to do. Anytime we have a job to do, we're going to go over into the JavaScript and we're probably going to write a function. So let's write a function called draw buttons. I'm going to need a place to put all my buttons. I'm going to be putting them right inside of here. Okay, so let's do this. Let's go ahead and say document.getElementById. And what's the ID? I don't remember. Oh, buttons. That makes sense. So let's put in buttons right here. I was a smart guy who named that thing. And what I can do is I can say dot. Before we said text content. I want to change the text of my output box. Well, I don't want to change the text this time. I want to change the HTML this time, because the HTML is what's going to be needed in order for me to put in HTML buttons. Does that kind of make sense? So there's differences. This is text content. These are HTML content. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the HTML. Okay, so if I just write HTML, these are my options to choose from. Do I want to get HTML? Do I want to set the HTML? Do I want to set the inner HTML? Do I want to set the outer HTML? Okay. Or do I want to insert adjacent HTML? Well, what we can do is we can say, let's change the inner HTML to equal, this is a test. So if I do that, I should be able to, come here. Let's give ourselves a little bit more room. Let's go ahead and say draw buttons. And I get, this is a test. Okay. And it's in big bold letters. So that shows me right there that, hey, I know that that worked. I was able to insert, with my little picker here, an actual H1 into the page, which you can see right here. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to replace this with all of my buttons. What I'm going to need to do first is I need to bring that loop back that we wrote over here in the console, right? That did this. And I want that to happen right here. Oop. Let's give ourselves a little bit more room on this side again. Oop. Okay. So there's my for loop. I want all this to run, and then I want this to happen. And so if I do that, I come over here and I say draw buttons. My console log just printed out all 100 buttons. Sick. That's awesome. I'm so happy about that. But those buttons didn't show up on the page. Lame. Super lame. Well, they didn't show up on the page because right here, I'm putting them out to the console. I'm not putting them out to the page. So let's go ahead and do this. I don't want them to go to the console. I want them to go to the page. So what you might think is you're like, okay, cool. Let's grab this piece right here then and put it right here. And that will work, but that's a very slow way of doing that because every single time I go to get a button, I have to get the button. I have to go to the page. I have to find the right element. Once I find the right element, I can put the button in there. And then I go back to the page and I have to find the element again, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I can optimize this a little bit better. Okay. If I only have to draw to the page one time down here, and what I draw to the page are essentially all the buttons. Now, right now, if I run this code, draw buttons, it's gonna log. It's not gonna log the console anymore because I took out the console log. But it is gonna give me an error that's like all the buttons is not a thing. What do you mean draw all the buttons? That doesn't make a lot of sense. What we're gonna need to do is we're gonna need to create a variable called all the buttons. And all the buttons are going to just start as an empty string. And then right here, we're gonna say all the buttons plus equals that extra button. So what that should do for me is that's going to run that loop. And instead of putting all those buttons out into the console, what it's going to do is it's going to put them all inside of all the buttons. And then I'm going to take all the buttons and I'm going to put them on the page. Okay. So let's get rid of that extra line of code right there because that one's driving me nuts. So it's that one. And now let's say draw the buttons. And now I get 100 buttons. 100 buttons, way too many buttons. Let's only draw 10. No, why didn't it draw the number 10? Yeah, probably less than or equal to 10. So draw the buttons. Sick. I got 10 buttons. Guys, I changed something pretty dramatic about the page. I probably better play my game and make sure that it works. Psh, 5's quite low. 10 is so high. So, yep. Looks like my game still works. Nice. That's a very important piece. I changed it. I'm now drawing the buttons dynamically. But if I'm a user and I land on the page, you got to remember, this is what I see. Where are my buttons, right? When the page very first loads, I probably need to draw the buttons. And so what I can do is instead of opening up my console and saying draw buttons, I can just say draw buttons down here, okay? Again, function definition, function execution. So now, when I very first load the page, technically, page loads, no buttons on it. And as soon as the JavaScript is done running, it hits line 44 and it draws all the buttons. According to the HTML, it looks like this. But the JavaScript runs at the end and puts those buttons on there. And it happens so fast that it looks like they were always there from the get-go. So for all intents and purposes, they are there, right? But if something were to break inside your JavaScript, right? So if I were to do something like this, errors, what happens is the HTML is loading. It's trying to draw all the buttons, but it errors out before this happens. And if I look at my console, let's see, console. I get error is not defined. So it's like it's still trying to do the thing, but it fails before it's able to finish it. And because it failed, those buttons didn't show up. So if as you're coding, if your button stops showing up, it's probably because you threw some sort of error somewhere in your code. And we need to solve that error. And then as soon as you solve that error, your buttons will probably pop back up again. So that will happen. So always remember, I got to those tiny states of done. A tiny state of done is a very good place to always code to. And then if something breaks, you're like, it's okay, I don't need to freak out that my buttons aren't showing up. It's because I have some sort of error. And as soon as I solve that error, my buttons are going to show back up. Like I'm okay. I don't need to freak out. Because that happens a lot. Students will be like, no, I was coding, everything was working great. And then all of a sudden I wrote this like one thing and now my buttons don't work. So I need to go draw my buttons. And it's like, no, draw your buttons is fine. You proved that it was fine earlier. So your error is probably somewhere else. Does that make sense? So the last thing you want to do is go try and fix what you think is broken code when it's not broken because something else is happening. So drawing the buttons. I like it. I think it would be really pretty easy to write another similar function called draw play again button. And my draw play again button, well, I'm probably going to do this exact same thing right here. But instead of having to draw 100 buttons, I only need to draw one button. And so the one button that I need to draw, I can probably just write it out like this. Just like I would as if I were in HTML. So I'd say button, button. We'll say play again. And on click, we want to say play again. Does that make sense? So if I come over here and I say draw play again button, draw play again shows up on the page. If I click it, why didn't my button show up? That's lame. I want my buttons to show up. What would probably help is if inside of play again, instead of console logging the hidden number, we say draw buttons. So check this out. We draw the play again button. We click play again. All my buttons show back up. Pretty fancy. So if I play this game, 6. 6 is quite low. Oh, dang. 8. Yes. Dude, that was fast. That was 2 guesses. I like that it says good job, you got it, but wouldn't it be nice if it also drew the play again button? How am I going to make it do that? So right here, I should just be able to say draw play again button. So let's play the game. 5. No, 5 is so high. Okay, 3. 3 is quite low. So if I click 4, heck yes, dude, this is awesome. If I click play again, no, why does my output say, good job, you got it? I probably want to do that. So if you hit play again, what do we want to write to the output? Can you guess my number? So we'll say, can you guess my number this time? Right? That makes sense. So, all right. So, hello, can you guess my number? 6. Too low. 9. Oh, yes. Can you guess my number this time? Wait a second. No. What's that? It did say good job for like half a second, and then it got rid of it. No. Why? That's lame. I don't want it to say, can you guess my number this time until you click play again. So what should I do different? Right now, it's currently inside of draw play again button. Yeah, on the click of play again. So probably like right here. So let's test that. I just moved where that happens at. And now if I say 4, 4 is so high. Dang, dude. 2. 2 is so high. Oh my goodness. Good job. You got it. There's my message. I'm feeling happy about this. And if I click play again, can you guess my number this time? Cool. Right? Pretty cool game. If I hold the Alt button or the Option button on Mac, I can just hit my up and down arrow keys, and then you can move lines up and down. Once you get used to VS Code, you'll have to like write an essay for some reason, helping kids with schoolwork. I don't know what it is. For some reason, I find myself occasionally in like Google Docs or Microsoft Word and I can't use all the hotkeys that work in VS Code, and I'm like, this text editor sucks. Why can't I just move lines up and down? Yeah, and truth be told, I could be anywhere on the line and it works. I think what we should do is let's make that dang card flip over and let's put the number inside that card. That sounds rough. That sounds really rough. Okay. And what I probably need is the other side of this card. It needs to be HTML, CSS, JavaScript because it's dynamic. It's not like I'm going to draw an actual image that has all the right numbers. I mean, maybe I would. If I knew that I was only ever going to use the numbers, 1 through 10, I might just like have an image of card 1, card 2, card 3, card 4, and I have them all the fronts of them and they look cool and they look fancy. And then I could just show and hide images. But if I want this to truly be a dynamic game that allows me to play between 1 and 10 or 1 and 100 or 1 in 10 million. The other thing that I also think would be nice is if you click 5 and it says that's so high, I would like it to disable 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now, reality is we probably only have time before noon to do one of those things. All right. Card flip's going to be fancy CSS. Fancy CSS. So let's go ahead and look at that. So I'm going to be honest. I have to look at this as a reference, because this is not one of those things that I just know how to do because I have to do it super often. Flipping a card over is not like the most common thing. So I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I'm gonna look at this as a reference. So let's see. We've got on the card class. We're gonna do some fanciness to it. So we're gonna say position is relative, which isn't gonna change anything just yet. We're gonna set the perspective to 5 pixels. I have no idea why I'm doing that right now, but I'll be able to tell you here in a second. We're gonna set the transition transform to 1 second. Okay. I just did transform. This is transition. So this is essentially like the animation is going to affect the transform, and it's going to take 1 second for it to play. So it's like a 1 second card flip. We'll be able to adjust this number to like 10, and it will be a very slow. So let's we'll look at that. And then let's do this. Let's say if the card is flipped, we are going to apply these things. We're going to say transform, rotate Y 180 degrees. And then we're going to say transition, transform, and this is going to take, we'll make this one take like 3 seconds here. And then we've got front and we got back and back. Okay, all right, we're going to play around with this, see if this works. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to come into my card and I'm going to add the class flipped. That doesn't seem to do much for me, but if I'm looking at this example, it looks like we have to explicitly have a front and a back to our card. Oh. And we're going to put our image inside the back of the card. Okay. We're then going to use the front of the card. And the front of the card is going to have a div. It's going to have the ID. We'll call this the hidden number. And we'll just test for right now. We'll just put a 10 inside of here. Okay. Ooh, yeah. Okay, cool. So if you look at this, I'm writing out, numbers. They're actually showing up backwards because the CSS has already flipped them over. Is the way that works. So let's do this. You're always going to be super low. Yeah. All right. So we have the card. We have flipped, which is going to actually trigger the flip. We are going to do this. The front and the back are going to have some basic styles attached to them. Position, absolute, height, 100%. The width is 100%. Back face visibility. Dang, dude. That is not a property I use very often. It's hidden, which basically means when it flips over, I don't want to show, I'm not actually showing the back of the element that I'm flipping over because that would just be the invert of the image. So it's just like truly flipping the image over. And the numbers, like you saw, they were printing out backwards. I don't actually want it to look like that. Fixed height and a fixed width on the card itself. Let's say auto. Nice. Okay, cool. And you see right here, you can see the numbers. It's really hard to see them right now, but you can see them at the moment. Okay, cool. So a little bit more fancy CSS stuff. Sure. Dark shadow. This is the type of stuff like no one remembers. I'm straight up cheating off of no, this is not the important part. This is like the enrich part, right? And if I didn't have like mixed reference to go off of, this would take me quite a while to figure out. Okay, cool. So I have this container, right? Looks like when Mick did this, his card probably didn't have the border around it, which is why he put this in. I think I can turn that off. And unfortunately, my image does have that little border around it. So cool. We have front, back. The back has the hue rotate. That's fine. And that should work. Okay. That should work. So let's now. All right. I'm messing something up. I have to figure out what it is here real quick. Oh, I forgot one line of code. Oh, that's what it is. So the card, we need to say transform style preserve 3D because it's actually flipping in 3D space. And then hopefully if we right flipped, this does what we want it to do. There's the number. Okay, not a slow flip yet. It will be when we add it, not on page load, because on page load, it's basically already flipped over, right? So we need to be able to dynamically add that flipped and remove that flipped. And I want that number to actually show up in the center of the front. So I think if I say I, and we're gonna do I, that shows up in the middle. So here's where we'll use like our fancy card and our fancy card. I don't think I want those truly italicized. But this one I'll put over on the left. This one I'll put over on the right. So let's go ahead and say class. We'll call this start. We'll call this end. And start. I think I should be able to say justify self start. No. Okay, I'll fix that here in a second. Let's actually watch it work. Okay. Cool. So this is our hidden number. My hidden number probably shouldn't be 1,000. It should probably be, the actual number, which I don't want to put that actual number on the page until you've guessed the number correctly, right? I also don't want the card to be flipped by default. I want it to look like this. Okay. So from a game logic standpoint, what we want to do here is we want to say, when you guess the right number, let's add the flipped class and let's update the hidden number on the page to be the right hidden number. Make sense? So let's go back into our JavaScript. And we're going to need to be able to target this card here. So we're going to say ID is card. And right here, we've got a little bit of a job to do. Right? We're going to say, you know what? Maybe I'll put it here inside the draw play again button. Kind of makes sense. Let's do document.getElementById card. And let's go to the class list Yep. And let's add flipped. Okay. So that's going to dynamically add flipped whenever we say draw the play again button. Okay. What we also probably want to do is we want to say document.getElement by ID hidden number. And we better set the hidden number to our hidden number. Hex content of the hidden number. Let's see if this works. So we're going to guess 4. 4 is so high. We're going to guess 2. 2 is so high. We're going to guess 1. 1 is so high. Uh-oh. We're going to guess 5. 5 is so high. We're going to guess 1. Oh. All right. We'll figure that one out. 3 is so high. 2. Whoa. Sick. Let's play again. No. Okay. So when you click play again, remember anything that we do, we pretty much need to undo right here. So let's go ahead and set the content to 0, 0, 0. And let's, instead of adding flipped, let's remove flipped. Okay. So now if I play the game, 5 is so high. 2. Whoa. Let's play again. No. Why did they do it? Oh, it was just so slow. Super duper slow. That was slow because of the transition. 10 seconds. Let's do 1. All right. Let's test that. 5, 3, 4. Nice. You did also see those numbers go to 0, 0, 0, right? If I didn't want that, you just, yep. Instead of putting anything in there, just put nothing in there. And then when you play the game, 5, 3, 4. Wait, there it is. 2. Now this time when I hit play again, it's probably going to 0 that out, which is fine, right? Now I need to fix my flipped. So let's look at this when it is flipped. Okay. I had start, I had end. I think if I just do the front of the card, let's add a little bit of padding here of like 10 pixels. Nah. Well, let's not do that. Let's take start and we can transform, translate on the X to 0. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. I just want to say this because I didn't write this CSS myself. I'm like, dude, I don't know how Mick even pulled this off for a second. Hang on. Let's see. Front of the card. Why is this all aligned to the center? Did I center this on the front? Space between, flex. There it is. Cool. So yeah, align self, start, we'll move that over there. Align end, we'll move that over there. Might add a little bit of like padding to this guy. 10 pixels, move him in. Or maybe just use Argent. Probably work similarly. I also feel like that card's still like really hard to see, so I could just make it bigger with my font size. So let's take those two things, dump them over here, and let's change the font size to like 2 EM, right? And then most of this I want to also be on the end. Okay, except the end, we'll say align self end. That looks a little bit better, right? For my flipped over card. Cool beans. Fun stuff, right? Super fun. And again, that's all just like fancy CSS. That's not something I obviously don't know how to just like pull that one out of my head, without having a reference. So cool stuff though. But for today, we want you guys to build a similar game, but rock, paper, scissors. Okay. We know how rock, paper, scissors works. Okay. We have a mock for you. Okay. I will also say you can start off with just 3 very simple buttons. Why is it? Build it in the console first. It won't be fun. The computer's choice is always rock to start. You throw paper and make sure it works, right? If you can get it, then cool. We would think a UI like this would be kind of neat, right? You chose this, computer chose this. Here's your choices every single time. Wins, ties, losses, some of those other types of like stretch goaly things. Having a log that continues to append might look a little different than the one that we did today. If you can't get the log to append things, then just get just a single output, right? That's totally fine. If you want to use these very specific images, you can just click on the image and click on export and then say export rock, and you can download that image if you want to. Okay. Also, not required whatsoever. Okay. I would start with just plain old buttons. Don't even worry about making it pretty. Okay. And then we have kind of a getting started guide here for you guys to walk through. So, sound good? That's it for today then.